Little girls are creepy. I mean, all kids are monsters, but little boys, they just like destroy your house, you know? They just break everything in sight. Little girls are plotting something. There's like deep, deep evil there. And you know the only thing creepier than a little girl? Two little girls. I mean, when Kubrick wanted to turn up the creepy in Shining, what did he turn to? Twin girls. And he had Jack Nicholson standing next to him. With Halloween right around the corner, I wanted to focus on some creepy true stories. And no true story has creeped me out possibly more than the story of Jennifer and June Gibbons, also known as the Silent Twins. Two girls, born 10 minutes apart, whose obsession with each other grew over time into madness, crime, and death. Born in 1963 in England, June and Jennifer Gibbons were born to a Barbadian father who was a pilot for the Royal Air Force. They both had a speech impediment, and it took them a long time to start speaking, but when they did, they kind of spoke only to each other, and they only spoke in their own language. They had a rough time in school. They were silent, they were twins, they were black in a school with no other black kids in it, so they were bullied a lot, and the teachers didn't know what to do with them. They actually were allowed to go home early because they were bullied so badly. There is actually a term for language that only twins use with each other. It's called cryptophagia. Their weird behavior got the attention of the child counselors in their school, who called them selective mutes. And some even thought that their language that they spoke was some kind of primitive African click language. The twins were just incredibly withdrawn. They wouldn't look anybody in the eye. They wouldn't talk to anybody else. They would only communicate through writing. And even weirder, they kind of coordinated their movements. They would do things at the same time. They were always in lockstep at all times. They were just obsessed with their twinship. Unable to do anything with them, the school sent them to a special school called Eastgate Center for Special Education when they were 14 years old. And here they were studied extensively, and they actually found out that this secret language that they had was actually just English, but it was with a lot of their speech impediment and sped up. As they became teenagers, they became more and more withdrawn. They refused to even speak to their family. They kind of just lived in their room together, and they withdrew into sort of an imaginary world that they created. They both wrote novels. They created imaginary characters in their room. They just kind of had this little spot, and they stayed there. As they got a little bit older, they decided that they didn't want to be twins anymore. They didn't want to be together all the time. They decided they want to be individuals, as people tend to do when they become teenagers. So the school actually separated them, and this did not go well. The school gave them an option to send one of them to a different school and separate them completely, but they wanted to let the girls decide who was going to go away, and this led to them screaming and yelling at each other, which was something nobody had ever seen before. To try to create just a little separation anyway, the school divided them up into different rooms, and this didn't go so well either. In fact, they would find June catatonic on her bed, not even changing clothes, not even using the bathroom, refusing to talk to anybody, crying so much that snot and tears were just flowing to the floor. Eventually they left Eastgate and basically just went back home to their parents, where they locked themselves into their rooms and watched the world through binoculars out the window. And the more time they spent together, the more they began to hate each other. They wrote obsessively in their journals, and often in their journals they wrote about how much they hate each other and how much they wanted to hurt each other. Their twinship had become something of a prison. After about 2 years of this, they were 18 years old, and they decided that it was time to get out and see the world a little bit. And there were a couple of boys that they had become enamored with when they were at Eastgate, so they sought these boys out. Problem was, these boys were kind of troublemakers. They were from America. It's not why they were troublemakers, but they were from America. And they had been involved in robberies and arson, but these girls liked them and they showed them some attention that they never had before. So they had this whirlwind summer, sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole thing, and things kind of spiraled out of control. All those years of silence and withdrawal came out in one big explosive summer. Now that they were social and they were, involved with these boys, their rivalry became physical. At one point, June tried to choke Jennifer with a radio wire, and Jennifer tried to drown June in a river. But things really fell apart when they found out their boyfriends were going back to America, and they started acting out, probably as a way of getting their attention at first, but then just because it just kind of got out of control. It started as petty crimes, moved on to arson. They burned down a tractor factory with nobody in it, but this escalated to more and more fires, and they were eventually caught. And the police had an airtight case against them because they detailed all of this in their diaries. They were easily convicted, and they were sentenced to Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital until they were better, just an indefinite sentence. And at 19 years old, they were the youngest patients ever admitted there. What they found at the hospital was that they couldn't be together and they couldn't be apart. Put them in the same room together, they would fight with each other. Put them in separate rooms, they would stop eating. So they would put them back in the same room and then the pattern would repeat itself. Eventually they were diagnosed with schizophrenia and they were separated completely into 2 different wards, heavily medicated, and after about 2 years, they finally started speaking again. And this is when things finally started to get a little bit better for the twins. The psychiatric treatment began to work after a while. They were allowed to write letters to each other and communicate that way. After they got a little bit better, they were able to see each other again, but they did finally become their own people. But they weren't happy people. They wrote in their journals and in letters to each other that they believed that the only way either of them could be happy is if the other one was dead, that as long as the other one existed, they were going to be miserable. They seemed to have sort of a death pact. They knew that they couldn't be with each other and they couldn't be without each other. They were locked in together until one of them died. In March of 1993, the sisters were moved to Caswell Minimum Security Prison. This was like sort of a transitionary state before they could finally get back into public. And Jennifer told her parole officer that she knew that everything was going to get better because she was going to die soon. And it turned out the very next day, while they were being transported to their new location, Jennifer put her head on June's shoulder and passed away. It was determined that she had acute myocarditis, which is basically inflammation of the heart. It's a rare condition and usually not fatal. June spent 1 year at Caswell before she was released. And she went on to live a relatively normal rest of her life, free from prison, both real and imagined. What started as a childhood obsession transformed into full-blown schizophrenia by the time they were older, according to the people who studied them at the prison anyway. And they were almost like multiple personalities in one person's head. They couldn't be away from each other. They couldn't be together either without going crazy. Now, over the years, the twins have been depicted as evil or even possessed, but they were really just victims of mental illness, unable to break free of each other. I think this is true of a lot of people. Obviously, most people don't get that obsessed, and most people don't have that kind of mental illness that they clearly had. But, you know, a lot of the little idiosyncrasies we have when we're kids, if we don't, keep track of it, if we don't monitor that, it can sort of take over our personalities, and it can take over what we do in our lives if we don't watch it and if we're not careful. So maybe that can be the lesson we learn from the silent twins. Keep check of your obsessions. Don't let them get the most of you. So that's kind of sad, but very interesting to me. I've always been fascinated by their story. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet that you can find about them, a really great documentary and whatnot. I will link all that down in the description below if you want to find out more about it. Please like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, check out some of my other stuff, and if you like those, hit subscribe. Be part of the team. It'd be a lot of fun. New videos every Wednesday, Monday. When do I do things? New videos every Monday and Thursday. Nailed it. All right, thanks a lot for watching. You guys go out, have an eye-opening rest of the week, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.